The warning lights of the Terran Defense Station Omega-7 bathed everything in crimson as explosions rocked the hull. Sergeant Marcus Chen pressed himself against the bulkhead, his plasma rifle heating up from continuous fire. Through the smoke and debris floating in the zero-gravity section, he could see the sleek forms of Vorthan fighters cutting through space like deadly silver arrows. Station Control. This is Chen. Deck 7 is compromised. I count at least 40 hostiles boarding through breach points Alpha and Beta. He spoke into his comm unit while checking his weapons charge. 30% remaining. The response crackled with static. Acknowledged, Sergeant. All civilian personnel have been evacuated to the core sectors. You are authorized to fall back to defensive position, Charlie. Marcus looked down the corridor where emergency lighting flickered over bodies of both human defenders and alien invaders. The Vorthans were tall, angular beings with 4 arms and skin that shifted between blue and purple depending on their mood. Right now, they all seemed to be showing the deep violet of combat rage. Negative, Control. If I fall back now, they'll reach the reactor core in 15 minutes. I'm holding this position. Sergeant, that's a direct order. Fall back immediately. Marcus switched off his comm. He had been a soldier for 12 years, had fought pirates in the Outer Rim, defended colonies from raiders, and survived 3 different alien conflicts. He knew when a strategic position mattered more than following orders. The deck plating vibrated beneath his boots as another Vorthan assault craft clamped onto the station. These weren't random pirates or desperate refugees. This was a coordinated military strike, and the Vorthans had come prepared. Their energy weapons cut through standard Alliance armor like it was paper, and their 4-armed physiology gave them significant advantages in close combat. Marcus counted his remaining grenades. 2 plasma charges and 1 EMP device. Not enough to stop a full assault, but maybe enough to delay them until reinforcements arrived. The first group of Vorthans rounded the corner in perfect formation, their weapons trained down the corridor. Marcus waited until they were halfway to his position before triggering the first plasma grenade. The explosion sent 3 of them tumbling in the low gravity, their purple blood forming small floating spheres in the air, but more kept coming. Always more. His rifle finally died with a soft whine, its power cell completely drained. Marcus drew his sidearm and continued firing, each shot carefully aimed. Humans might not have 4 arms or naturally tough skin, but 12 years of military training had taught him to make every bullet count. The Vorthans pressed forward with their characteristic tactical precision. They moved in groups of 8, 4 providing covering fire while the other 4 advanced. When Marcus managed to take down one of their fighters, another immediately moved to fill the gap. They were professional soldiers, not the undisciplined raiders he was used to facing. "Interesting," came a voice from behind the advancing troops. It spoke perfect English with only a slight hissing accent. "The human continues to resist despite impossible odds." A new Vorthan emerged from the group, this one wearing more elaborate armor with gold trim, clearly an officer of some kind. Unlike his soldiers, his skin showed a curious green tint rather than the combat purple. "I am Commander Zilfex of the Vorthan 3rd Fleet. You have fought well, human, but your situation is hopeless. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the accords of military prisoners." Marcus fired his last 3 shots, taking down one more Vorthan soldier before his sidearm clicked empty. He looked at the dozen remaining enemies surrounding him, their weapons all trained on his position. "The Galactic Council will investigate this unprovoked attack," Marcus said, raising his hands slowly. "The Alliance will respond." Zilfex made a sound that might have been laughter. "The Alliance is already responding, human. They have abandoned this station and retreated to the inner systems. Your government values this remote outpost less than it values a diplomatic solution." The commander gestured with 2 of his arms, and several soldiers moved forward with restraining devices. The electromagnetic shackles locked around Marcus's wrists and ankles with a soft hum, immediately making his limbs feel heavy and sluggish. "You fought alone against 40 trained warriors," Zilfex continued as they escorted Marcus toward their assault craft. "Most species would have surrendered immediately or fled in terror. Your dedication is admirable, if pointless." Marcus said nothing as they led him through the breached hull into the Vorthon ship. The interior was designed for beings much taller than humans, with high ceilings and controls positioned for four-armed operators. The gravity was slightly heavier than Earth standard, making each step more difficult with the electromagnetic restraints. They placed him in a holding cell that was clearly designed for larger prisoners. The walls were some kind of smooth metal that gave off a faint blue glow, and the air tasted of ozone and something vaguely metallic. A single bench extended from one wall, and a small alcove contained what he assumed were sanitary facilities. Hours passed before Commander Zilfex returned, accompanied by two other Vorthons in different uniforms. One wore the deep red of what Marcus guessed was intelligence services, while the other had the pure white of medical personnel. "I am curious about your species," Zilfex said, settling his forearms in a complex pattern that might have been their equivalent of crossing them. "Your resistance was remarkable, but also puzzling. Why did you not retreat when ordered?" "Because retreat would have compromised the station's defenses," Marcus replied simply. "But you were alone. One soldier cannot hold an entire section against a professional assault force." "No, but one soldier can delay them long enough for reinforcements to arrive or for the defenders to regroup." The intelligence officer leaned forward, its red uniform shifting color slightly in the cell's lighting. "Fascinating. The human chose certain capture over tactical withdrawal. This suggests either extreme loyalty conditioning or severe mental defect." "I prefer to call it doing my job," Marcus said. The medical officer extended a scanner of some kind, playing it over Marcus from head to feet. "Physical parameters are within expected ranges for the species. Slightly above average muscle density, evidence of extensive physical conditioning. No obvious genetic modifications or cybernetic enhancements." "Yet this one specimen held your assault for 17 minutes longer than our tactical analysis predicted," Zilfex noted. "Our intelligence suggests humans are a relatively weak species, dependent on technology and group tactics for survival." Marcus couldn't help but laugh. "Your intelligence is incomplete." "Explain." "Humans don't just use technology and tactics. We adapt. Every time you think you understand our limitations, we find ways around them." The intelligence officer made notes on a device that projected holographic symbols into the air. "The subject displays typical human arrogance despite being in a completely disadvantageous position. This may be a psychological defense mechanism." "Or maybe I know something you don't," Marcus replied. Zilfex studied him with eyes that shifted through several shades of gold and amber. "You are suggesting that your capture was somehow part of a larger plan?" "I'm suggesting that you might want to reconsider your assumptions about what humans are capable of." The three Vorthans exchanged glances, their skin colors shifting in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as their equivalent of facial expressions. They were clearly communicating something beyond words. "Very well," Zilfex finally said. "We will have opportunity to test these claims. You will be transferred to our research vessel, where our xenobiology teams can conduct proper analysis of human capabilities." "Research vessel?" Marcus asked. "The Infinite Inquiry. Our most advanced scientific ship, equipped with facilities for detailed study of alien species. We have collected specimens from 47 different worlds over the past decade." The implications of that statement sent a cold chill down Marcus's spine. Specimens? Living beings suitable for research purposes. The advancement of Vorthon knowledge requires comprehensive understanding of our neighbors in this galaxy. The medical officer spoke for the first time, its voice carrying a clinical detachment that was somehow more disturbing than outright hostility. The Galactic Council prohibits experimentation on sentient beings, Marcus said. The Galactic Council recognizes the rights of its member species, Zilfex corrected. Humanity has not yet achieved membership status. Your species is classified as pre-contact primitive, despite your recent technological advancement. Marcus felt the restraints grow heavier around his wrists. The political implications were almost as troubling as the immediate threat. If humanity wasn't recognized as a full galactic citizen species, then apparently the normal rules of warfare and prisoner treatment didn't apply. Besides, the intelligence officer added, our research has advanced medical science considerably. The data we gather benefits all species eventually. I'm sure the other 47 species you collected felt the same way. Most of them lacked the cognitive capacity to understand the greater purpose their sacrifice served. They left him alone after that, and Marcus spent the time studying his cell and testing his restraints. The electromagnetic shackles seemed to respond to movement, becoming heavier when he tried to struggle and lighter when he remained still. The walls showed no obvious weak points, and the door was a seamless section that simply slid away when opened from outside. The transfer to the research vessel took place 6 hours later. Marcus got his first look at a Vorthan capital ship as they moved him through a docking tube between vessels. The Infinite Inquiry was massive, easily the size of a small city, with organic curves that seemed to flow like water frozen in metal. Towers and antenna arrays covered its surface in complex patterns that hurt to look at directly. His new cell was larger but more sophisticated. The walls seemed to observe him, shifting through different spectrums of light every few minutes. Sensors tracked his movements from multiple angles, and the air itself felt charged with some kind of monitoring energy. A new group of Vorthans came to examine him within hours of his arrival. These wore the pure white of the medical caste, but their equipment was far more advanced than the simple scanners he had seen before. They took samples of his blood, skin, and hair without asking permission, their forearms working with efficient precision. Remarkable cellular structure, one of them commented to another. Much more resilient than our preliminary data suggested. The muscular system shows evidence of adaptive strengthening beyond normal parameters for the species, replied its colleague. This specimen may have undergone some form of enhancement. No, said a third, studying readings on a floating display. These modifications are entirely natural. The subject has simply pushed his biological systems to their maximum potential through training and conditioning. Marcus lay still on the examination table, knowing that resistance would be pointless while bound by the electromagnetic restraints. But he listened carefully to everything they said, filing away information about their procedures and equipment. The neural activity is particularly interesting, the first medical officer continued. Most species show elevated stress responses when placed in captivity. This human maintains remarkably stable brain chemistry despite his situation. Perhaps the species has natural psychological defenses against capture scenarios. Or perhaps this individual is simply exceptional among his kind. They ran dozens of tests over the following hours, measuring everything from his reflexes to his ability to process different types of sensory input. Marcus cooperated passively, answering their questions when asked, but volunteering nothing additional. Why does your species engage in physical conditioning beyond survival requirements? One of them asked while measuring his muscle response to electrical stimulation. Because being stronger makes you more useful, Marcus replied. Useful for what purpose? Protecting others. Accomplishing missions. Surviving situations that would kill weaker individuals. Yet you were captured despite this conditioning. Being captured and being defeated are different things. The medical officer paused in its work. Explain this distinction. Capture is just a temporary change in circumstances. Defeat means you stop fighting entirely. They made more notes, their discussion shifting into rapid Vorthon that Marcus couldn't follow. But their body language suggested they found his responses somehow significant. Commander Zilfex arrived as the medical team was finishing their initial examination. He studied the readouts they had generated, his skin shifting through several different hues as he processed the information. "Fascinating," he said finally. "Your physical capabilities are impressive, but not beyond what we expected for your species. Yet your psychological profile suggests capabilities that our intelligence networks never detected. Maybe your intelligence networks need better sources. Perhaps, or perhaps humanity has been deliberately concealing its true nature from galactic observation." Marcus remained silent, which seemed to intrigue Zilfex even more. "We will begin more detailed analysis tomorrow," the commander announced. "I want comprehensive data on human neural patterns, physical limitations, and psychological breaking points." "Breaking points?" Marcus asked. "Every species has conditions under which they cease to function effectively. Some break under physical stress, others under psychological pressure. A few simply shut down when separated from their social groups for extended periods." Zilfex's skin took on a predatory orange tint. "We will discover which category humans belong to." After they left, Marcus lay in his cell considering his situation. The electromagnetic restraints made movement difficult, but not impossible. The monitoring systems were sophisticated, but they seemed designed for larger prisoners who might try to break through walls or doors rather than humans who might find more subtle means of escape. Most importantly, the Vorthons had made a critical error in their assumptions. They thought of him as a specimen to be studied, a problem to be solved through scientific analysis. They expected him to break down under pressure or reveal human weaknesses that could be exploited. They had no idea that every day of captivity was giving him valuable intelligence about their ship, their procedures, and their blind spots. They were teaching him about their technology, their psychology, and their tactical thinking. The Vorthons were about to learn why human soldiers were trained not just to fight, but to think, and why the most dangerous thing you could do with a human prisoner was give them time to observe and plan. Marcus closed his eyes and began mentally cataloging everything he had learned about Vorthon ship design, security procedures, and crew rotations. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new opportunities to gather intelligence, and eventually new opportunities to show his captors exactly what humanity was capable of when properly motivated. Dr. Thix was the lead xenobiologist aboard the Infinite Inquiry, and in her 40 cycles of research, she had never encountered a specimen quite like the human. Most captured beings either cowered in fear, raged helplessly against their restraints, or fell into catatonic states within the first few rotations. The human did none of these things. Instead, Sergeant Marcus Chen seemed to be studying them just as intently as they studied him. During each examination, his eyes tracked their movements, equipment, and procedures with an analytical focus that made Thix increasingly uncomfortable. When they asked questions, he answered precisely what was asked and nothing more, but she could see him filing away every detail of their conversations. "Subject continues to demonstrate exceptional psychological stability," she noted into her research log. "Day 7 of captivity shows no signs of stress-induced mental deterioration. If anything, the human appears to be adapting to circumstances with remarkable efficiency." Her assistant, Dr. Vrex, looked up from his examination of the human's latest blood work. "Perhaps we should increase the stress factors in his environment. Sleep deprivation, temperature fluctuation, irregular feeding schedules?" "Not yet," Thix replied, studying the readings from the cell monitors. "I want to understand his baseline behavior patterns first. This level of adaptation suggests cognitive abilities well beyond our initial intelligence estimates." Through the observation window, They could see Marcus performing what appeared to be some kind of exercise routine, despite his electromagnetic restraints. He moved slowly and deliberately, working within the limitations of the shackles to maintain his physical conditioning. Even in captivity, he refused to let his body deteriorate. "Fascinating," murmured Commander Zilfex, joining them at the observation station. "Most prisoners would have given up on physical maintenance by now." "The human seems to view his situation as temporary," Thix explained. "His behavior suggests he believes rescue or escape is possible." "Both are impossible," Zilfex stated flatly. "We are 3 days into Vorthan space, far from any Alliance patrol routes, and escape from the infinite inquiry has never been achieved by any species." Marcus finished his exercise routine and settled onto his cell's bench, closing his eyes in what appeared to be meditation. But the neural monitors showed his brain activity remained highly active, processing information at levels typically associated with problem-solving tasks. "What is he thinking about?" Vrex wondered aloud. They were about to find out. Marcus had spent 7 days carefully observing the rhythms of the ship. Guard rotations changed every 12 hours, with a brief overlap period where both shifts were present. The medical staff worked in cycles of 6 hours on, 3 hours off. Most importantly, the cell monitoring systems underwent automated maintenance cycles every 48 hours, during which certain functions were temporarily reduced. The electromagnetic restraints were sophisticated, but they operated on principles similar to human technology. The longer he wore them, the better he understood their operation. They responded to sudden movement by increasing magnetic resistance, but gradual, slow changes in position didn't trigger the same response. Over the past 3 days, Marcus had been slowly stretching the restraints during his meditation periods, using techniques he had learned in survival training. The Vorthans had calibrated them for human baseline strength, but they hadn't accounted for the fact that humans could gradually increase their muscle tension and joint flexibility through sustained effort. Tonight would mark the beginning of the next monitoring maintenance cycle, and Marcus had finally worked enough flexibility into his restraints to implement the first phase of his plan. When the night shift guards made their routine check at hour 18, they found him apparently unconscious on his cell floor. His vital signs, monitored by the ship's systems, showed what appeared to be severe physical distress. "Alert medical immediately," ordered Guard Lieutenant Zeph, his skin shifting to the worried yellow-green of concern. "The specimen appears to be in crisis." Dr. Thix arrived within minutes, accompanied by 2 medical assistants and a portable examination unit. When they entered the cell, they found Marcus unconscious and barely breathing, his skin pale and cold to the touch. "Massive system shock," Thix diagnosed, running her scanners over his still form. "Possibly some kind of delayed reaction to the examination procedures. We need to move him to the medical bay immediately." What they didn't realize was that Marcus had spent years learning advanced survival techniques, including methods for controlling his autonomic nervous system to simulate various medical conditions. The key was slowing his heartbeat and breathing while maintaining consciousness, a skill taught to Special Forces operatives to survive interrogation or medical examination by hostile forces. As they loaded him onto the medical transport, Marcus mentally mapped the route through the ship's corridors. He noted guard positions, security checkpoints, and most importantly, the locations of the ship's critical systems. The medical bay was located 2 decks down from the main command center, with only 1 security station between them. In the medical bay, the Vorthans connected him to more sophisticated monitoring equipment while they ran diagnostic scans. Marcus continued his controlled simulation of unconsciousness while gathering intelligence about the medical facility's layout and security measures. "I cannot identify the cause of this condition," Thix admitted to her colleagues after 3 hours of testing. "All of his biological systems appear to be simply shutting down. Perhaps the stress of captivity finally overwhelmed his psychological defenses. suggested Dr. Vrex. Or perhaps humans are more fragile than our initial analysis suggested, added Commander Zilfex, who had been observing the proceedings. Many species show delayed breakdown responses to capture and examination. That was exactly what Marcus wanted them to think. The Vorthans decided to keep him in the medical bay overnight for continuous monitoring. They reduced the power settings on his restraints, believing that his weakened condition made escape impossible. 2 guards were stationed outside the medical bay, but they were positioned to prevent entry rather than monitor the interior. At hour 22, during the overlap between guard shifts when the corridors were most active, Marcus began his actual plan. The first step was escaping the restraints. The electromagnetic shackles were designed to prevent violent escape attempts, but they had a built-in safety protocol to avoid accidentally killing prisoners. If the system detected that a prisoner's circulation was being dangerously restricted, it would automatically reduce power to prevent tissue damage. Marcus used pressure point techniques to temporarily restrict blood flow to his hands and feet. The monitoring systems detected what appeared to be a circulation crisis and automatically reduced the restraint's power. In that moment of reduced magnetic field strength, Marcus was able to slip his hands free. Once his hands were loose, disabling the ankle restraints took only seconds. The Vorthans had never encountered a species that could manipulate their own biological responses so precisely. The medical bay's security systems were focused on preventing unauthorized entry, not monitoring for escaping patients. Marcus moved carefully through the facility, avoiding the main sensors while studying the equipment and computer interfaces. Vorthon technology was elegant but logical. Their computer systems used holographic displays with gestural interfaces designed for four-armed operators, but the basic principles weren't difficult to understand. Marcus spent precious minutes learning to navigate their data systems while maintaining the appearance of unconsciousness on the monitoring equipment. What he discovered in their databases was both fascinating and disturbing. The Infinite Inquiry wasn't just a research vessel. It was part of a systematic intelligence-gathering operation that had been studying dozens of species throughout the galaxy. The Vorthons were preparing for something they called the Great Consolidation, a coordinated expansion that would bring multiple star systems under their control. Earth was on the target list. The intelligence files contained detailed assessments of human military capabilities, population centers, and resource extraction potential. But Marcus could see gaps and errors in their data. The Vorthans had been observing humanity from a distance, relying on passive scanning and intercepted communications. They didn't understand human tactics, adaptability, or the psychological factors that made human soldiers effective. Most critically, they had no idea that humanity had been preparing for exactly this kind of contact. Marcus downloaded as much data as he could access, using the medical bay's diagnostic systems to copy files onto a storage device he improvised from spare components. Then he began Phase 2 of his plan. The Infinite Inquiry's design was typical of Vorthon engineering, efficient, logical, and utterly predictable. Critical systems were located in the most protected areas of the ship, with multiple redundant safeguards. But like most advanced civilizations, the Vorthons had grown dependent on their technology. Marcus made his way through maintenance corridors toward the ship's power distribution center. The passages were designed for automated repair drones, not infiltrating prisoners, which meant they were unmonitored by security systems. The power center was exactly where he expected it to be, protected by nothing more than access locks designed to keep out curious crew members rather than determined saboteurs. Marcus had studied their lock mechanisms during his medical examinations, and defeating them took only minutes. Inside the power center, Marcus found exactly what he was looking for: the ship's primary energy distribution network. The Vorthons used a centralized system that channeled power from their fusion reactors through a series of nodes and relays. It was incredibly efficient, but it had a critical weakness. If you knew exactly where to place a disruption, You could cascade the entire system. Marcus didn't want to destroy the ship. That would have been simple enough, but it would also eliminate the intelligence he had gathered and make him a martyr rather than an asset. Instead, he wanted to demonstrate something far more valuable. He wanted to show the Vorthons that they had seriously underestimated humanity. Using components from the medical equipment he had liberated, Marcus constructed a feedback device that would temporarily overload the ship's systems without causing permanent damage. The key was precise timing and placement to create maximum disruption with minimal actual harm. As he worked, Marcus reflected on the irony of his situation. The Vorthons thought they were studying human limitations. Instead, they were about to receive a practical demonstration of human adaptability under pressure. The device was simple but effective. When activated, it would send a precisely calibrated pulse through the power grid that would temporarily disable non-essential systems while leaving life support and navigation intact. The ship would be left helpless but habitable, giving Marcus the opportunity to complete his mission. He placed the device in the optimal location and set its timer for 15 minutes. That would give him just enough time to return to the medical bay and resume his unconscious act before the chaos began. The return journey through the maintenance corridors was more challenging than the outbound trip. Security teams were beginning to conduct random sweeps as the late-night shift settled into their routines. Marcus had to wait several times for patrols to pass, using the ship's own architecture to avoid detection. He made it back to the medical bay with 3 minutes to spare, quickly reconnecting his monitoring equipment and resuming his controlled, unconscious state. To the watching medical staff, it appeared he had never moved. When the feedback pulse hit the ship's power grid, the results exceeded Marcus's expectations. Emergency lighting flickered throughout the infinite inquiry as non-essential systems went offline. Artificial gravity fluctuated, creating moments of disorienting weightlessness. Computer displays crashed and restarted, losing hours of stored data. Most importantly, the security systems that monitored the ship's corridors and compartments went completely dark. "What is happening?" Dr. Thix demanded as the medical bay's lights dimmed to emergency levels. "System-wide power fluctuation," came the report over the intercom. "Engineering teams are investigating. All personnel maintain current positions until further notice." Marcus allowed himself a small smile while maintaining his unconscious facade. The Vorthons were about to learn that capturing a human soldier wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. In the confusion that followed as engineering teams scrambled to restore full power and security personnel struggled to maintain order with failing systems, Marcus began the final phase of his plan. The Vorthans had made a fundamental error in their assumptions about human psychology. They thought fear and isolation would break him down. They believed that superior technology and overwhelming force would ensure his cooperation. They had no idea that every challenge they presented was simply another problem for him to solve. And humans, Marcus reflected as he prepared for the next stage of his escape, were very good at solving problems. Commander Zilfex would soon discover that their helpless specimen had been studying them just as carefully as they had been studying him. And the test results were about to come back. The chaos Marcus had triggered aboard the Infinite Inquiry was even more effective than he had anticipated. Vorthon society was built on predictability and systematic approaches to problem-solving. When their advanced technology failed unexpectedly, they struggled to adapt. While engineering teams worked frantically to restore power to the ship's systems, Marcus made his next move. During the confusion, he had noticed that the medical bay's communication equipment remained functional, operating on a separate power grid reserved for emergency systems. The Vorthans had designed their ship with multiple redundancies, but they had never considered that someone might use those safeguards against them. Accessing their communication system required bypassing several security protocols, but Marcus had observed enough of their procedures to understand the basic authentication methods. More importantly, The power fluctuations had reset many of the security systems to default configurations, creating temporary vulnerabilities in their network. Within 20 minutes, Marcus had established a connection to the ship's central computer core. What he found there confirmed his worst fears about Vorthan intentions. The Great Consolidation wasn't just an expansion plan. It was a systematic program to evaluate and either subjugate or eliminate every potentially threatening species in their region of the galaxy. The files contained detailed invasion scenarios for dozens of worlds, including comprehensive studies of each species' military capabilities, resource value, and resistance potential. Earth's file was extensive and terrifying. The Vorthons had been observing humanity for over 50 years, cataloging their technological development and strategic capabilities. They had identified human nuclear arsenals, mapped major population centers, and even analyzed human psychological profiles to determine optimal conquest strategies. But they had made critical errors in their assessment. The Vorthon analysis classified humans as moderately dangerous but containable through superior technology. They had observed human conflicts and concluded that human military doctrine was primitive and predictable. Most damaging of all, they believed that human morale would collapse quickly when faced with obviously superior alien forces. Marcus knew they were wrong on every count. He began uploading their intelligence files to a concealed transmitter he constructed from medical equipment components. The data would be broadcast on multiple frequencies using Vorthan communication protocols, ensuring it would be detected by any Alliance vessels in the area. Even if no human ships received the transmission, the signals would eventually be picked up by monitoring stations and forwarded to Earth. But broadcasting intelligence wasn't enough. Marcus needed to send a message that would fundamentally change how the Vorthons viewed humanity. As power was gradually restored throughout the ship, Marcus heard increasing activity in the corridors outside the medical bay. Security teams were conducting deck-by-deck searches to identify the source of the system failures. It would only be a matter of time before they discovered his escape from the restraints. That was exactly what he wanted. When Guard Lieutenant Zeph and his security team entered the medical bay for their scheduled check, they found Marcus sitting calmly on the edge of the examination table, his restraints neatly placed beside him. He appeared completely relaxed, as if captivity was merely a minor inconvenience. "Alert Commander Zilfex immediately," Zeph ordered, his skin shifting to the alarm colors of orange and red. "The human has escaped his restraints." "I wouldn't call it escaping," Marcus said conversationally. "More like deciding they weren't necessary anymore." The security team raised their weapons, but Marcus made no threatening moves. Instead, he stood slowly and walked to the center of the room, hands visible and empty. "You will return to your restraints immediately," Zeph commanded. "I don't think so," Marcus replied. "We need to talk, all of us. You are a prisoner aboard a Vorthon military vessel. You have no authority to make demands." Marcus smiled, and something in that expression made the guard step back involuntarily. "That's where you're wrong. You see, you've been thinking about this situation all wrong from the beginning." Commander Zilfex arrived within minutes, accompanied by Dr. Thix and a full security detail. They found Marcus still standing calmly in the center of the medical bay, apparently unconcerned by the dozen weapons pointed at him. "How did you escape the restraints?" Zilfex demanded without preamble. "The same way I caused your power fluctuations," Marcus answered. "By understanding your technology better than you understand mine." "Impossible. Our systems are beyond primitive human comprehension." "Your systems are sophisticated but predictable. You build everything according to logical patterns because that's how your minds work. The problem is, human minds don't work the same way." Dr. Thix stepped forward, her scanner active and reading his vital signs. "Commander, his stress indicators are completely normal. He shows no signs of fear or anxiety despite his situation. That should tell you something important, Marcus noted. Zilfek studied him carefully. You believe you have some advantage we are not aware of. I know I do, and I'm going to prove it to you. Marcus walked slowly to one of the medical stations, ignoring the weapons that tracked his movement. He activated the holographic display and began entering commands with surprising fluency. How do you know our interface protocols? Thix asked, her skin showing the purple of shock. I've been watching you work for days, Marcus explained as files appeared on the display. Your gestural interfaces are designed for four-armed operators, but they're not difficult to adapt to two-armed use if you understand the underlying logic. The files he brought up were detailed technical specifications of the ship's power systems, security protocols, and communication networks, information that should have been impossible for a prisoner to access. This data is classified beyond your security clearance, Zilfek said, his voice tight with disbelief. I know. I took it. When? You have been under constant surveillance. Have I? Marcus activated another display, showing security footage from the past 24 hours. The cameras showed him apparently unconscious in his cell and later in the medical bay. Your surveillance systems see what I wanted them to see. He switched to internal sensor logs, showing his vital signs during the same period. The readings clearly indicated an unconscious subject in medical distress. But I wasn't unconscious, Marcus continued. I was learning about your ship, your technology, your procedures, and most importantly, about you. The medical staff exchanged glances, their skin colors shifting through rapid cycles of confusion and alarm. You want to know what makes humans dangerous? Marcus asked, addressing the entire group. It's not our technology or our physical capabilities. It's the way we think. He brought up the Vorthon intelligence files on human military capabilities. You studied our wars and our weapons, and you concluded that we're a moderately advanced but ultimately primitive species. You measured our technology against yours and decided you were superior. Marcus highlighted sections of their analysis that classified human strategic thinking as linear and predictable. But you missed the most important factor. Humans don't just fight with weapons or technology. We fight with adaptation. Every problem you give us becomes a puzzle to solve. Every limitation you impose becomes a challenge to overcome. Commander Zilfek was studying the displays with growing alarm. How extensive is your access to our systems? Complete, Marcus answered simply. He activated new screens showing real-time data from throughout the ship, crew positions, system status, communication logs, and tactical displays. Impossible. Our security protocols specifically prevent... Your security protocols assume that intruders will behave like Vorthans, Marcus interrupted. They're designed to stop someone who attacks systems directly or tries to overcome them with superior technology. They don't account for someone who studies the systems first and then finds ways to work with them instead of against them. Dr. Thix was running continuous scans on Marcus, her instruments showing readings that clearly disturbed her. Commander, I am detecting no signs of cybernetic enhancement or technological augmentation. This human is accomplishing these tasks with purely biological capabilities. Which brings us to the real problem, Marcus said. You captured me thinking I was a specimen to study. A representative sample of human capabilities that you could analyze and catalog. He paused to let that sink in. But I'm not a representative sample. I'm a soldier, and soldiers are specifically trained to be exceptional. Marcus activated a new display showing detailed files on human military training programs, special forces selection, and advanced combat techniques. Did you know that human soldiers train for years specifically to operate behind enemy lines with minimal equipment? We learn to escape from restraints, navigate unfamiliar technology, and survive in hostile environments using only our intelligence and adaptability. The security guards were becoming visibly agitated, their weapons never leaving Marcus but their confidence clearly shaken. You thought you were studying humanity, Marcus continued. Instead, you've given a human Special Forces operative complete access to your most advanced research vessel, detailed intelligence about your military capabilities, and comprehensive plans for your invasion of human space. Commander Zilfex finally understood the magnitude of their error. You have been gathering intelligence since the moment we captured you. From the moment you captured me, I have been on a reconnaissance mission inside enemy territory. Marcus corrected. Everything I've observed, everything I've learned, everything you've inadvertently taught me about Vorthon technology and tactics has been carefully recorded and transmitted to Alliance forces. He showed them logs of the data transmissions he had made using their own communication systems. By now, Earth Command knows about your great consolidation plan, your fleet positions, your invasion timetables, and your technological capabilities. More importantly, they know that Vorthens consistently underestimate human adaptability. The bridge received an emergency communication at that moment. Long-range sensors had detected a massive Alliance fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The human reinforcements had arrived ahead of schedule. How? Zilfex demanded. Our intelligence indicated no Alliance forces in this sector. Your intelligence was deliberately fed incomplete information, Marcus explained. Humanity has been preparing for first contact with potentially hostile alien species for decades. We've been watching you watch us. The tactical displays showed Alliance ships moving in coordinated formations that demonstrated a clear understanding of Vorthan vessel capabilities and weaknesses. You studied our historical conflicts and concluded that human tactics were primitive and predictable. But those were conflicts between human factions using similar technology and doctrine. You've never seen how humans fight when we have detailed intelligence about our enemy's capabilities. More alarms sounded throughout the ship as the Alliance fleet began broadcasting surrender demands in perfect Vorthon. Your choice is simple, Marcus announced to the increasingly panicked crew. Surrender now and be treated as prisoners of war under Alliance protocols, or resist and discover why human soldiers are trained to win wars instead of just studying them. Commander Zilfex looked at the tactical displays showing his small research fleet completely surrounded by superior human forces. The Alliance had not only responded faster than thought possible, but had arrived with perfect intelligence about Vorthon positions and capabilities. This was all planned, he said slowly. Not planned, Marcus corrected. Prepared for. Humanity learned long ago that the galaxy contains species more advanced than ourselves. We've been getting ready for this kind of contact. Dr. Thix was still staring at her scanner readings. Commander, I must report that this specimen's capabilities exceed our entire database of known sentient species characteristics. That's because you were measuring the wrong things, Marcus said gently. You cataloged my physical strength, neural activity, and biological responses, but you never tested the most dangerous human capability, which is... Marcus smiled as the Alliance fleet began docking procedures with Vorthan ships throughout the system. We learned from everything. Every challenge you presented taught me something about your species, your technology, or your psychology. Every test you ran gave me more information to work with. The medical bay's communication system activated, and Marcus heard a familiar voice speaking in clear English. Sergeant Chen, this is Admiral Rodriguez aboard the ANS Determination. Please report your status. Marcus walked to the communication panel, still ignoring the weapons pointed at him. Admiral, Sergeant Chen reporting. Mission accomplished. I have complete intelligence packages ready for download, including tactical assessments, technology analyses, and detailed invasion plans. Outstanding work, Sergeant. Are you ready for extraction? Affirmative, Admiral. Though I think our new Vorthon friends have some questions they'd like answered first. Marcus turned back to Commander Zilfex and his increasingly demoralized crew. You wanted to study human capabilities, he said. Consider this a practical demonstration. You captured one human soldier and thought you had gained a valuable research specimen. He gestured to the displays showing Alliance forces taking control of the entire Vorthon research fleet without firing a shot. Instead, you gave that human access to your most sensitive intelligence, allowed him to study your technology and tactics in detail, and provided him with the perfect opportunity to demonstrate why humans consider problems to be opportunities in disguise. The docking clamps engaged as Alliance Marines began boarding the Infinite Inquiry. The question now, Marcus continued, is what you're going to do with this information. Your great consolidation plan assumed that humanity would be caught off guard by technologically superior forces. Now you know that humans have been preparing for exactly this scenario. Commander Zilfex slowly lowered his weapon. What do you recommend? I recommend you reconsider your expansion plans, not because humans are necessarily stronger or more advanced than Vorthons, but because we approach problems differently. You prefer controlled, predictable situations where superior technology ensures victory. Marcus gestured to the chaos surrounding them as Alliance forces efficiently secured the ship. Humans specialize in uncontrolled, unpredictable situations where adaptability and creative thinking determine outcomes. Any conflict between our species will quickly become the kind of chaotic scenario where human advantages are maximized and Vorthon advantages are minimized. The medical bay doors opened, and a squad of Alliance Marines entered, weapons ready but not threatening. Their leader, a captain with the insignia of the Special Operations Command, nodded to Marcus. Good to see you in one piece, Sergeant. The intelligence package you transmitted gave us everything we needed to plan this operation. How long were you monitoring my situation? Marcus asked. From the moment you activated the emergency beacon in your equipment during the initial firefight. We've been tracking Vorthon movements in this sector for months, waiting for an opportunity to gather intelligence about their capabilities. Marcus turned to the stunned Vorthon crew. Did you really think that a remote Alliance station would be defended by a single soldier with no backup plan? Dr. Thix was running final scans, her instruments showing readings that challenged everything she thought she knew about human biology. Fascinating, she murmured. This human's neural activity throughout his captivity shows patterns consistent with active learning and problem-solving rather than stress responses. He was literally using our examinations as intelligence-gathering opportunities. That's the difference between studying a species and understanding them, Marcus explained. You measured what I could do, but you never asked what I would do when properly motivated. As the Alliance Marines escorted the Vorthon crew toward the shuttle bays for processing, Commander Zilfex stopped beside Marcus. Your species is more dangerous than we calculated, he admitted. We're exactly as dangerous as we need to be, Marcus replied. The question is whether you want to find out just how dangerous that can be. Admiral Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system again. Sergeant Chen, we're ready to begin negotiations with the Vorthon leadership. Your intelligence suggests they're a rational species that responds well to clear demonstrations of capability. Confirmed, Admiral. I believe they're ready to discuss alternative approaches to interspecies relations. As the Infinite Inquiry was taken under Alliance control, Marcus reflected on the irony of the situation. The Vorthons had captured him, intending to learn about human limitations and weaknesses. Instead, they had discovered that humans considered capture to be just another tactical situation requiring creative solutions. They had learned that human soldiers were trained not just to fight, but to think, adapt, and turn every disadvantage into an opportunity. Most importantly, they had learned why Earth's defenders could not be restrained by conventional thinking or superior technology. Because the greatest human weapon wasn't any device or tactic. It was the simple fact that humans never stopped looking for ways to solve the problems in front of them. The Vorthons had thought they were studying a specimen. Instead, they had been educated by a teacher who had learned as much about them as they had learned about him. And that education was about to change the balance of power in their entire region of space. As Marcus prepared his final report on Vorthon capabilities and recommended diplomatic strategies, he smiled at the thought that his captors had gotten exactly what they asked for. They had wanted to understand what humans were capable of. Now they knew.